welcome back to another video with PD Nurse T. My name is Tyra again for those who might be new or those that might be returning. It's been a while since I've been here, and for that I am so sorry, but I have just finished my 16-week orientation, and it was a lot more intensive and fatiguing than I thought it was going to be, and so I really had hoped to make weekly videos. Obviously that didn't happen, but you know, I moved, I had to readjust with my new commute, working 4 days a week, 40 hours is a lot different than 36 hours a week, and I was just really mentally and physically fatigued, so it was very hard to do. I tried to film one or two and they just weren't as good as I would have hoped they would have been, and I just didn't want to put like half-assed content out in the world. But anyway, I am done with my 16-week orientation and it feels good. This is my first week of working 36 hours a week, and so I just have a lot more free time. Mostly this week I've been trying to like catch up on sleep, but either way it feels amazing, and so I hope to have more videos and relatable content coming out. I have like 3 other video ideas on the mend already, so stay tuned for those. They should be coming really soon. What I wanted to talk about in this video is kind of like a really brief overview of my 16-week orientation in a level 1 trauma center, major city, pediatric ICU. And it's been very up and down. It's been a great learning experience. I didn't know just how much went into, you know, pediatric ICU patients, but it's been a wild ride, but it's been awesome. So I remember after filming that first week of my life as a Picu nurse, we had a lot of traumatic brain injury patients. And for the most part, those are kind of most of the neuro kids I've seen. I had another patient who had like a craniotomy who went into DI and then SAEDH and then back to DI, so that was interesting. We've had a couple cardiacs. We've had a couple really sick kids, like a disseminated adenovirus kid who needed to go on some life support, as well as a bunch of like respiratory viral kids, because 'tis the season. I've had some DKAs, diabetic ketoacidosis patients, and some surgical patients as well, spinal fusions, things like that. So all in all, it's been really great. I feel really good most days, and then there are some days when I'm at work and I'm like, can I do this? Like, are you sure you want me to do this? Like, the whole thing. But no, for the most part, it's been really good. And so I have like 5 or 6 tips that'll probably sound really redundant to every other nurse channel video on here, but these are the things that I found to be helpful, and so we will go through them. I have the notes on my phone, so that's why I'm looking down here. So the first one's the most important. Every nurse channel says it. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I ask questions all the time, and sometimes I'll ask questions even if I know what the answer is, just to make sure, like, to double check, like, you're new, everybody knows you're new, and everybody says this on every other nurse channel, but people are afraid of the new nurse who acts like they know it all, because you shouldn't. Like, nursing school does not teach you real world nursing, so as much content and, you know, pathophys that you might know, like, what happens in the textbook of nursing and real life nursing are completely different. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I ask questions all the time, and I think my preceptors really kind of enjoyed that about me, actually. But like just yesterday, I had a kid on some really high ventilator settings, and I asked the respiratory therapist. His settings were like a pressure support of 7 and a PEEP of 7. If you know vent modes, that might make sense to you, but this is my first like super sick kid on the vent, and these were settings I had never seen before. And so in my mind, like I was like, well, doesn't that mean that his like lung collapses every single time? And so like obviously I knew that wasn't the case because people would obviously not have this kid on these settings, but like in my mind, like that's how the numbers made sense to me. And so I just went up to our floor respiratory therapist and I was like, can you just explain this to me, because in my mind the numbers seem like they would make this end result, which is atelectasis, but clearly that we wouldn't have this kid on these settings if that was the case. And so like we did like a whole 20-minute lesson on ventilators and the vents that we have specifically in my hospital. And so he told me that the PEEP of 7 is like, if everybody's here at 0 at baseline, a PEEP of 7 is here. So that's how much air we're leaving in the lungs. And then the 7 of pressure support is on top of the 7 of PEEP. And so that made more sense to me, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And this also helped me because throughout the floor, like on rounds and stuff, we talk about the vent settings and all this stuff. And so sometimes the doctor was, like if that was that kid's settings per se, sometimes the doctors would say, oh, they're on 14/7. And I'd be like, 14 from? And it's the combined, like the total amount of pressure in that kid's lungs in one breath is technically 14, because you have this 7 to get them to the PEEP of 7 to keep them open, plus the 7 of the pressure support, and so things like that. And so I'm so constantly learning. I'm so always asking questions, and like I always preface it, I'm like, you know, in my brain, it seems like it's this way, but I know there has to be some disconnect. Like I'm like, you know, I just don't think I'm completely getting it. So it's never like I'm completely lost on me, which is also fine. But just like clarification questions I ask all the time. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Going off of that, don't be afraid to speak your uncertainty. Super important, especially in the ICU, and these kids can decompensate so quickly. Don't be afraid to speak your uncertainty. And so this was maybe like 6 weeks ago, when I was still like pretty involved with my preceptor. I mean, she was starting to let go of the reins, but she was still pretty involved. And we had a kid in the morning when he was vented. We suctioned him, and I don't know why, but he just like, he wasn't biting on the tube, but he just like clamped down, and we couldn't ventilate him, we couldn't oxygenate him. Sat shut down to, I want to say the 40s, like we were trying to bag and we were doing all these things, and it was just like lung resistance, like he would just not, I don't even know, like we just could not ventilate or oxygenate this kid. And so they decided to paralyze him with vecuronium, which we use vecuronium, I wouldn't say pretty frequently, but we use it. And so while all of this is happening, they're like, all right, can somebody go get back? And I mean, I'm at this point, like I've never seen this happen in a kid, and I think a lot of people were also kind of like, what the hell is going on? And so I was just kind of like watching the whole scene unfold. And so they asked for somebody to go get back. And that would have been the first time I got Vec, drew up Vec. I was just like, I don't know, I should be the one doing this. So they asked that, and my preceptor looked at me, and I was just like, can you go get the Vec? Like, it was just something that I was just like, you know, I just want to watch the scene unfold, and it would be my first time doing a Vec, and this is a very, like, high-stress situation for me as a new grad, and so something like that I asked them to do. Another instance, the first time we extubated a patient, my preceptor, this was even earlier in my orientation, and my preceptor was like, you want to do it? And I was like, no way, I surely don't. And then, like, all the docs were there, and so they came into the room. We had the intubation card outside the door, just in case we needed to emergently re-intubate. And she asked me again and in front of everyone, and I was just like, nah, I'm okay. And so I know like some people, like, I'm sure she was expecting the peer pressure to like get to me, but I was like, no, I'm good, you can do it, girl, you got it. So never be afraid to unspeak your uncertainty. Just like 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had to get blood cultures for the first time, and you know, they're relatively simple. You know, you're pulling blood to put in a bottle. However, you know, the procedure that you do it to make sure you're getting like the accurate, if there is bacteria, from the accurate source and not from like environmental or anything like that. And so like that was something else where they were like, oh, it's blood cultures, you can draw those. And it's like, yeah, I know how to draw blood for my patients, but if you could just come in with me to make sure that I'm doing the whole procedure right, and so we get this right and we can cover this kid if they do need some kind of like antibiotic change or what have you. So just things like that, like just never be afraid to speak your uncertainty. However, on the flip side of that, like, you need to step out of your comfort zone. And so since having done all those things, I've drawn blood cultures multiple times, I feel great about it. I have, what else have I done? I've used VEC a couple of times. I haven't had to drop a vial, but I've used VEC a couple times now. I feel semi-okay about it. And then just like 2 weeks ago, I retaped my first ET tube, which was such an experience. So I was with a different nurse on the floor who isn't part of my like primary group of preceptors, but still an excellent nurse. And she was like, all right, we need to retape that tube. Let's go retape it. Have you retaped one? And I was like, nope. She was like, well, you're gonna do this one today. And I was just like, okay, sure, I guess. Like, because at that point I was just like a little bit more comfortable with the handling of ET tubes. I never retaped one before, but I had that nurse with me and our respiratory therapist. So, and all the docs were there that morning. So I felt pretty okay that if something were to go wrong, I have all the right people in the right space. We'll be okay. And at my hospital, our respiratory therapists do know how to intubate. They just typically don't, because we are a teaching hospital, and so usually our residents will attempt to intubate first and foremost, and then if they can't succeed, our attendings are usually right there watching the intubation, so the attendings will just intubate. So I knew I was in the right place for this. So, you know, they're walking me through it. I have helpers. I have more than enough hands to hold the tube, make sure the kid's okay. And I will never forget, I had just taken off both pieces of tape. We use the Y method. I think that's what it's called, the Y method. I had just taken off both pieces of tape, and I was getting ready to place the new tape. And I remember the nurse just being like, okay, look at me. And I looked at it and she was like, take a breath, because I know you're holding it right now. And I didn't even realize. Like, I was just like, oh, okay. Like, the hardest part was over. Like, taking the tape off, that's the part where things can move around and really jostle. And then putting the tape back on isn't really that bad. And so I was really thankful for that. And she was like, no, I get it. Like, we have all been there before. We've all been new. Like, I understand. And the kid that we were changing the tape on was a really, really sick kid. And I did not want to lose that airway. And so, like, that was really nice. And that kind of environment, I hope everyone has that kind of environment at work. I don't feel like there is every nurse on my floor I can ask a question to without fear of judgment or backlash or anything. I can ask questions all day, all night. They will answer them, no problem. And I think that makes it easier to, one, acknowledge and speak up about the things that you don't know and need help with, but two, it also makes it a really safe environment for you to want to step out of your comfort zone, which is a really big deal. Especially in the intensive, care unit. So I love my floor for that. But anyway, yeah, so that's my story about stepping out of your comfort zone. And you just have to do it. The first time it's going to be scary, and then it'll be fine. The next thing, ask others. It's a lot of asking. You're new. Ask others how they do things. And so even though I might know, procedures. Know your policies, know your hospital's policies on procedures and whatnot. Drawing blood, drawing multiple tubes, drawing blood culture, like all that stuff. Know your hospital's procedures and policies. However, there are several ways you can do something correct via the policy, especially if it's like a loose policy, and it be more efficient one way greater than a different way. So many ways. And so what I like to do, and some people might look at it as a downside, I saw it as an upside. I had 3 primary preceptors, and then because of my preceptor schedules and my schedule with class, it didn't always work out, and so I had to be with different nurses on the floor a handful of times. And so with each nurse, if I came across like a pretty typical standard, thing we do that there is a like policy correct way to do it, but that policy is very loose, I just be like, how do you do it? How do you do it? Because you're gonna find what works for you in your nursing practice, but these are also people that have been doing it for 5 to 9, 20, whatever, how many years they've been there, and they might be able to give you a tip that just works better in your flow or just makes more sense to you in your mind. So things like that. So I always ask people like, so this is how I did it, and I know that, I've seen people do it X, Y, and Z way, but like, how do you do it? Because you never know when a moment of efficiency could mean the world. So things like that, just always ask people how they do things. It's fine. Things like taping down an NG tube or there's just so many things. There's so many things. How would you set up that line? Would you put a stopcock here? Would you put 2 tridents? Would you just things to think about like that? Like how do other people do it? So that's a good one. The next thing is research. Look things up. It'll take you more time. It'll make you a better nurse though. Research. And so I'm thankful that at my hospital we have Up to Date, which is this big database about almost every topic under the sea you could think of, and we have unlimited access to it. And so during that first week when I had all those neuro TBI patients, I downloaded my 40-page up-to-date packet on the causes, things to look out for, the treatments, the preventative measures, so many things. Like, why would you use mannitol over 3%, things like that. And so it really helps you see the big picture, know what's important clinically, know how to treat it clinically, like doses, ranges, all that stuff. All that stuff's up to date. Whenever I have like an SAADH DI patient, I always use Up to Date. The last kiddo I had, I actually even pulled up a Khan Academy video because you need it to make sense so you can understand why you're doing the things you're doing and why certain things are ordered. Like that makes sense. You need to know why you're doing what you're doing to help your patient. I wish I had my up-to-date packets, but I actually threw a lot of them out because they were just piling up. But do your research. Another thing that I do all the time is go on Lexicomp and look at your IV compatibilities every day and make sure that the drugs you're hanging are compatible with each other and you know what can go where and what can't go where. Specifically what can't go where, because that's the most important. Another thing that we do in the Picu, if our kid's really sick and they have a ton of lines, we will make a little stick man and write out where their lines are and what's going through each port, each trident, and that is really helpful too, because you can walk into some of these rooms sometimes and get super overwhelmed And I'll insert a picture of like what this kind of looks like, but let's say they had a left radial A line, a left wrist PIV, a left fem line, they have an extended dwell in the right upper extremity, they have a PIV in the right foot, and all of these things have med lines and drips hooked up, and so it's really important to kind of like know at first glance and have like a reference tool to know what you're looking for, as well as what your push lines are. Very important, very important. And lastly, I carry around my little black book. This is her, this is she, and so I bring this to work every day. It never leaves my backpack except for this video. And I just write important stuff down in there. So on this page, I don't know if you guys will be able to see, but this is when we had like our TBI patients, and so it's talking about like ICP and just cerebral perfusion pressure, mannitol versus 3%, A-line setup, double check your pressors, what to give for a low K, a high K, a low glucose, a low calcium, a low sodium. I wrote in here trach to go bag because I had a trach patient I was traveling with, and I was like, what do I need to bring when I'm traveling with a trach patient? And so I want to write it down. Spare trachs, Vaseline gauze, bag mask, oxygen suction, flexible suction, scissors, trick ties, lube, syringe, all that good stuff. What do we have here? Surgical care. These are cold meds, so epi, what the dose is, what you'll use it for, atropine, adenosine, amiodarone, and all this is on your like PALS algorithm card, but writing stuff down helps me a little bit, so I wrote this stuff down. Mag sulfate, procainamide, lidocaine, sodium bicarb, like all that stuff. We had a couple cardiac kids, so like milrinone I wrote down, things like that. We had like a couple lessons on septic shock or shock in general really, so I wrote down tons about like your vasopressors, what receptors they work on, what they affect more so than the other, and this is all on septic shock, so as you can see like a ton, and some more PALS. And that's kind of what I have so far, but Holy Bible, and so if at work I have something new that I don't know and I up-to-date it, odds are I'm also writing it in here, for the most part, unless I'm super busy, because this I bring to work with me every day, and the up-to-dates, I throw them out after I collect like 5 of them, because they're each like 40 pages long. It's tons of information. So research, look things up, even on your day off, look things up. One day I had work the day before. I worked like let's say a Tuesday, and I had a certain kid who was going to go home, and I was with another one of my new grad colleagues, and they had a croup kid that I knew was going to be there the next day and that they would probably give me. So that morning on the commute into work, looked up everything I needed to know about croup, because I knew I was going to have that kid, and I knew I didn't really know much about croup. So research. It'll help you so much. And then the last thing I'm gonna speak on is just to like reframe your mindset. And this has been something that has been like super duper important to me, because you know you're new, and when you do something wrong or incorrect, or you feel overwhelmed, like it can definitely affect the rest of your week, or like it'll just have you like talking down on yourself and feeling really bad about yourself. And so I've been trying to just remind myself, like, I'm new, like I don't know everything, I won't know everything, I won't have good time management for a while, like I need to give myself some grace. And rather than looking at my, mistakes as mistakes, like look at them as lessons. And so one account that has been super duper helpful with that, it's an Instagram account, I believe it's Novice is the New Nurse, and she makes like these sayings that just pop up when you need them the most. Have grace for yourself. The goal was always progress, never perfection. And she writes these all the time. So I love it. It's been like a really good source of like positivity and reminding myself like why I even got into this profession in the first time, and in the first, like at first, and then like reminding myself this is a journey. I've worked 4 years to get to where I'm at, and this was my dream. And like dreams and the things you want in life, they take hard work and they take perseverance. And so I don't know, those have just been kind of like the common themes of my like orientation, I'd say, and the things that I could really say I like can take a step back and give to other people as advice. And so it's worked for me. Like I said, you know, each day is different. For the most part, I feel pretty good most days, which makes me feel good in the fact that I'm capable. And there are hard days sometimes. Like I will not sugarcoat it. There are some really hard freaking days sometimes, but this job is worth it. My patients are worth it. The work I'm doing is worth it, and I think that's what matters. So on that note, I will sign off. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you made it this far, click the like, subscribe, all the buttons. Like I said, I plan to have more videos up in the very near future, and hopefully I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.